What if the food ancient humans ate was far stranger than we imagine? Before supermarkets, before recipes, and before cooking shows, survival meant eating whatever the land could provide: meat, roots, insects, berries, seeds, bones, and even things modern people would never consider. This is the story of what ancient humans actually ate, and the truth may surprise you. When people think about ancient humans, they often imagine one simple picture: a hunter carrying a spear, a fire burning in the dark, a piece of meat roasting over the flames. That image is not wrong, but it is only a small part of the story. Ancient humans did not survive on meat alone. They did not live on one fixed diet, and they certainly did not eat the same way modern people do. Their food depended on where they lived, what season it was, what animals were nearby, what plants grew in the area, and how much skill they had learned from their group. In other words, ancient human food was not one diet. It was many diets. And that is what makes it so fascinating. The first thing to understand is that ancient humans were extremely adaptable. They had to be. If you lived thousands of years ago, you could not simply walk into a store and choose between rice, bread, pasta, fruit, fish, and snacks. You ate what you could find. You hunted when you could. You gathered when you could. You dug roots from the ground. You picked berries from the bush. You cracked nuts. You followed animal tracks. You looked for eggs, insects, shells, and anything else that could keep you alive. Food was not about taste first. It was about survival first. But survival food was not always boring. Ancient humans were clever. They learned which roots were safe and which were poisonous. They learned which fruits were ripe. They learned which animals were easiest to catch. They learned which plants could be eaten raw and which had to be cooked. They learned how to dry food, smoke it, or store it for later. That knowledge was passed down from generation to generation, and over time, it became culture. One of the biggest myths about ancient humans is that they only ate meat. That is not true. Meat was important, yes, but plants were just as important. A lot of ancient diets likely included leaves, roots, tubers, berries, nuts, seeds, mushrooms, and wild fruits. In many environments, plant foods may have been eaten more often than meat. Why? Because plants were easier to find. A large animal did not appear every day, but edible plants could be gathered regularly. This means the ancient human diet was often a mix of both. Sometimes meat was the reward. Sometimes plants were the daily base. Sometimes both were eaten together. That balance changed depending on the environment. If you lived near a river or lake, fish could be a major food source. If you lived in a forest, nuts and fruits may have been common. If you lived in dry grasslands, roots and hunted animals may have mattered more. If you lived near the coast, shellfish and sea animals could become important. Ancient humans were not locked into one kind of food. They were flexible, and that flexibility helped them spread across the world. One of the most important food discoveries in human history was fire. Fire changed everything. Before fire, many foods were hard to digest. Some were unsafe. Some tasted bitter. Some were full of bacteria or parasites. Cooking solved many of those problems. When humans began using fire for food, they could eat more kind of food more safely. They could soften tough meat. They could break down fibrous plants. They could make roots easier to chew. They could make food last longer. Fire did not just warm the body, it expanded the menu. This is one reason cooked food became so important in human evolution. But even with fire, ancient humans were still not eating like modern people. They had no processed sugar, no soda, no packaged chips, no restaurant meals, no artificial flavors, no giant farms full of the same crop. Their food was wild, seasonal, and local. If a plant was only available for a short time each year, they ate it when they could. If an animal migrated away, they had to follow or switch food sources. If a drought came, they had to improvise. That kind of life forced humans to become experts at reading the environment. They had to know where food was hiding. That knowledge may have been just as important as hunting skill. For example, many ancient people likely ate eggs. Bird nests could provide easy nutrition if discovered at the right time. Eggs were rich, portable, and valuable. They could be eaten cooked or raw, depending on culture and situation. Insects were probably also part of the diet in many places. Modern people often reject the idea, but insects are highly nutritious and abundant. Ants, beetles, larvae, grasshoppers, and other small creatures could provide protein and fat. In the ancient world, they were simply another source of food. Shellfish were another important food. They were easier to gather than large game. They could be found near coasts, rivers, and lakes. They were rich in nutrients and could feed entire groups if harvested well. Ancient humans also ate small animals. Rabbits, birds, rodents, reptiles, fish, and amphibians could all become food depending on the region. Larger animals were valuable, but smaller animals were often easier to catch and more reliable. This makes the ancient human diet look much more practical and varied than many people imagine. And here is something even more interesting. Ancient humans did not just eat food, they processed it. They hammered, cracked, cut, dried, crushed, and cooked it. Nuts had to be broken, grains had to be prepared, roots had to be cleaned, meat had to be cut, bitter plants had to be treated carefully. That means food preparation was already part of human intelligence very early on. Eating was not a passive act, it was a skill, and because food had to be worked on, food also became social. People gathered around the process, they shared tasks, they divided labor, they learned from one another. In many ways, food helped build human society. Another thing ancient humans probably ate was marrow. Inside animal bones, there is fatty, nutrient-rich marrow. If early humans had tools to crack bones, they could access this valuable food source. Bone marrow was precious because it contained energy and nutrients that were hard to find elsewhere. Ancient humans likely knew that bones could be more than waste. They could be a source of life. In some cases, they may also have eaten organ meats. Liver, heart, and other organs are rich in nutrients. Hunters often prefer organs because they are valuable and filling. In many traditional societies, organs are prized food. So when a large animal was killed, the meal was not just the muscle meat. It could include many parts of the body. That made the whole animal useful. Nothing was wasted. This pattern of using every part of an animal is one of the strongest signs of survival intelligence. Ancient humans were also probably aware of seasonal eating. They knew that some foods came only at certain times. Berries in one season, roots in another, game animals at one point in the year, fish runs in another. They lived according to natural cycles. This gave them a very different relationship with food than modern people have today. Today, you can eat strawberries in any season. You can buy imported fruit from across the world. You can eat the same foods year-round. Ancient humans could not do that. They had to follow nature's schedule, and that made food much more meaningful. When food was found, it mattered. When food was shared, it mattered. When food was scarce, it mattered even more. Hunger was a constant shadow in ancient life. That is why food was never just about eating. It was about safety. It was about status. It was about memory. It was about survival. In some groups, successful hunters may have been respected. In others, good gatherers may have been essential. Elders who knew which plants were edible may have had special value. People who could preserve food may have kept the whole group alive. Food knowledge was power, and because of that, ancient food habits became part of identity. Some groups may have preferred fish. Some may have relied heavily on roots and seeds. Some may have had strong meat traditions. Some may have used communal cooking. Some may have eaten raw food when necessary. Some may have fermented or dried food to save it. There was no single ancient menu. There were only survival strategies. That said, one thing is clear. Ancient humans ate far more naturally than modern humans do. Their food was not ultra-processed. It was not factory-made. It came from the earth, from animals, from water, and from the knowledge of their people. This may sound simple, but it was actually very sophisticated, because to survive on wild food, you had to know a lot. You had to know what to avoid. You had to know what to eat. You had to know where to look. You had to know when to move. You had to know how to cook. That is a massive skill set. So, what did ancient humans actually eat? They ate whatever kept them alive. Meat when they could get it. Plants when they could gather them, roots when they needed filling food, fruit when it was in season, insects when they were available, eggs, fish, shellfish, nuts, seeds, marrow, and organs whenever possible. Their diet was not glamorous, but it was smart, and that smart survival diet helped humans spread across the world, adapt to many climates, and become the species we are today. The truth is that ancient humans were not simple eaters. They were expert survivors, and their food tells the story of how humans learned to live with nature instead of just against it.